What if I told you that the greatest athlete who ever lived was almost destroyed, not by an opponent in the ring, but by the United States government itself? What if I told you that the man who made America proud at the Olympics was treated like a criminal the moment he came home? What if I told you that Muhammad Ali was not just a boxer? He was a revolution wrapped in a human body. And the people in power knew it, feared it, and spent years trying to silence it. This is not the Muhammad Ali they teach you in school. This is the real story. His name was Cassius Marcellus Clay, Jr., and he was born on January 17, 1942, in Louisville, Kentucky, a city where black people could not eat at the same lunch counter as white people, could not drink from the same water fountain, and could not expect the same justice from the same courts. His father painted signs and billboards for a living, and his mother cleaned houses for white families. They were not poor by the standards of their neighborhood, but they lived in an America that had already decided their son's ceiling before he ever took his first breath. When Cassius was 12 years old, somebody stole his bicycle outside a local fair, and a furious young boy went looking for a police officer to report the crime. That officer was Joe Martin, and instead of just filing a report, he looked at the angry, trembling boy in front of him and said, "If you want to fight whoever stole your bike, you better first learn how to fight." Joe Martin ran a boxing gym in the basement of the Columbia Auditorium, and Cassius Clay walked in that same day with fire in his eyes and nothing in his pockets. He had no training, no experience, and no idea that he had just walked through the door that would change the entire world. Within weeks, everyone in that gym knew this boy was different. He moved differently, thought differently, talked differently. While other boys threw punches, Cassius was already thinking 3 moves ahead. His trainer would later say, "I never taught him how to fight. I just tried to keep up with what he already knew." By the time Cassius Clay was 18 years old, he had won 6 Kentucky Golden Gloves titles, 2 National Golden Gloves titles, and 2 Amateur Athletic Union national titles. In 1960, at just 18 years old, he represented the United States of America at the Rome Olympics. And he did not just win the gold medal. He destroyed every single opponent he faced with a style of boxing the world had never seen before. He was fast in a way that heavyweight boxers were not supposed to be fast. He floated across the ring like a featherweight and hit like a truck. After winning gold, he came home to Louisville, Kentucky as an Olympic champion, and on his first night back, he walked into a restaurant to celebrate and was told to leave. Because it was a whites-only restaurant, an Olympic gold medalist for the United States of America turned away from a restaurant in his own hometown because of the color of his skin. According to his own account, that night, he threw his gold medal into the Ohio River. Whether the story is literally true or symbolic does not matter. What matters is what it meant. America had just used this young black man to win glory on the world stage, put him on television, called him a champion, and then sent him back to being nobody the moment the cameras turned off. That night, something hardened inside Cassius Clay that would never soften again. In February 1964, Cassius Clay stepped into the ring against Sonny Liston, the most feared heavyweight champion in the world. Liston was so terrifying that most sports writers refused to even predict the fight because they did not want to be responsible for hyping a massacre. The odds were 7-1 against Cassius Clay. Cassius Clay won by technical knockout in the 7th round. The morning after that fight, he announced to the world that he had joined the Nation of Islam and that his name was no longer Cassius Clay. His name was Muhammad Ali. America lost its mind. Newspapers refused to use his new name. Former fans called him a traitor. Sports commentators said he had thrown away his career. But Muhammad Ali stood at that microphone completely calm and said, I don't have to be what you want me to be. I am free to be who I want. He was 22 years old, and he had just drawn a line in the sand that would define the next decade of American history. He defended the heavyweight championship 9 times over the next 3 years. Every single time he stepped into the ring, he was not just fighting his opponent. He was fighting an entire system that wanted him to shut up, stay in his lane, and just be a boxer. He refused. Every single time. In 1967, the United States government sent Muhammad Ali a draft notice for the Vietnam War. And Muhammad Ali said no. He stood at the induction center in Houston, Texas, and when his name was called, he did not step forward. The reporters outside were waiting for a statement, and he gave them one that echoed around the entire world. He said, "I ain't got no quarrel with the Viet Cong. No Viet Cong ever called me the N-word. America erupted. Politicians called him a coward and a disgrace. Joe Frazier said he should go to jail. The New York State Athletic Commission immediately stripped him of his boxing license. The World Boxing Association took away his heavyweight title. The United States government took away his passport so he could not fight abroad. He was convicted of draft evasion and sentenced to 5 years in prison. He was 25 years old, at the peak of his physical career, the most dominant heavyweight champion in the history of boxing, and they took everything. But here is what they did not understand. They thought that taking his title would break him. Instead, it made him the most famous and most respected athlete on the entire planet, because people around the world, black people, poor people, oppressed people, young people who were also being sent to fight wars they did not believe in, they all looked at Muhammad Ali standing alone against the United States government, and they saw something they had never seen before. They saw a man who chose his conscience over his comfort, his conviction over his career, his truth over his title. The Supreme Court eventually overturned his conviction in 1971 in a unanimous 8-0 decision. But by then, he had already lost 3.5 years of his prime, years that no court ruling could ever give back. When Muhammad Ali came back to boxing in 1970, he was not the same fighter. The years away had cost him the blinding speed that made him untouchable. His legs were heavier, his reflexes slightly slower, and the men he now faced were bigger and stronger than the ones he had beaten before. But what he had lost in speed, he had gained in something far more dangerous: wisdom, patience, and an unbreakable will to survive. In 1971, he fought Joe Frazier in what was called the fight of the century. And he lost. For the first time in his professional career, Muhammad Ali was knocked down and lost a fight. The people who hated him celebrated. The people who loved him grieved. Muhammad Ali got up off the canvas, went home, and started training the next morning. In 1974, he traveled to Kinshasa, Zaire in Africa to fight George Foreman, the most physically powerful heavyweight champion who had ever lived. Nobody gave Ali a chance. George Foreman had destroyed every man he had ever faced, and Muhammad Ali invented something that night that has never been done before or since. He called it the rope-a-dope. He leaned against the ropes, covered up, and let George Foreman punch himself into exhaustion, absorbing punishment that would have destroyed any other man, waiting, surviving, enduring. And then in the 8th round, when Foreman was completely empty, Ali came off those ropes and knocked him out. At 32 years old, past his prime, slower than he had ever been, Muhammad Ali became the heavyweight champion of the world for the 2nd time. The whole world went insane, and Ali stood in the middle of that ring in Africa, on the continent of his ancestors, and roared into the night sky. It remains one of the greatest moments in the history of human sport. In 1984, Muhammad Ali was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, Doctors believed it was caused by the thousands of blows to the head he had absorbed over his career. The disease slowly took his voice, the voice that had moved millions. It took his coordination, the body that had floated like a butterfly. It took his strength, the power that had shocked the world. By the 1990s, the man who had once talked faster than anyone on the planet could barely speak above a whisper. But in 1996 at the Atlanta Olympics, with the entire world watching, Muhammad Ali walked out to light the Olympic torch. His hands were shaking visibly. His body was betraying him in front of billions of people. And he stood there, trembling, and lifted that torch above his head and lit the flame anyway. There was not a dry eye in that stadium, because everyone watching understood that they were not just seeing a man light a torch, they were seeing the definition of courage, not the absence of weakness, but the decision to keep going in spite of it. Muhammad Ali won the heavyweight championship of the world 3 times. He fought in what many consider the greatest sporting events in human history. He stood alone against the United States government and won. He gave up the peak years of his career for his beliefs and never once said he regretted it. But none of that is what made him the greatest. What made him the greatest was something much simpler. Every single time life knocked him down, and life knocked him down hard, he got back up. Not because it was easy, not because he was not afraid, but because he had decided, at 12 years old in a boxing gym, with nothing in his pockets, that he was going to be somebody, and nobody. Not a government, not a disease, not a defeat, not a stolen title, was ever going to take that decision away from him. The lesson is this: the world is going to hit you. It is going to hit you in ways you never expected, take things you never thought you could lose, and leave you standing in places you never imagined you would be. But champions are not measured by how hard they hit. They are measured by how many times they get back up. Muhammad Ali got back up every single time. Now, the only question that matters is, will you?